Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we got a lot to cover this week. Obviously, we're going to do some NCAA tournament talk, but we'll do that men's and women's tournaments in segments 2 and 3. We're going to go ahead and kick off the show with the local stuff in terms of most of the spring sports, in terms of baseball and softball. We'll start off with some baseball action because one thing you should know is that today Barren County will be hosting South Warren in baseball, and we will have that broadcast right here on 104 The Score. Jay Turner will have the call. The pregame is at 5:45 because first swing's at 6 o'clock. At first, I was like, wait, why is the pregame at 5:45? But then I realized, oh, yeah, they must be doing a 6 o'clock game. Because a lot of times they're starting at 5:30. So,
or 5 even.
Yeah, or 5 even. So, yeah, you kind of have to watch that sometimes during the spring to make sure you got your times right. It's not like basketball or football that basically starts at the same time no matter what's going on. So, anyway, yeah, we'll have that game here. Jay Turner will be on the call. I'm not sure who's doing the color with him or if he's just out there like in the good old days making the sounds of two pieces of wood clacking against each other so you can hear the sound of the bat. I always love that stuff. That's probably my favorite thing about especially baseball on the radio is these kind of sidebar things that happen during the course of a baseball game because of the pace of play and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of dead time.
Yes.
So, when you call baseball, you almost have to tell a story.
Right. And apparently Randy Lee, who does the WKU baseball, is one of the best at this. I've listened to a few of his broadcasts.
Yeah, right.
And
it's an art.
Yeah, it is.
It's totally different than other sports.
Yeah, I mean, because there's something going on in the other sports pretty much all the time. So there's no time where you have a story about the bobblehead dolls or any of that kind of stuff. If you listen to the Reds here on this station, you'll hear those conversations, and then they'll tell stories about people they knew who they were their favorite bobbleheads or whatever. Anyway, let's talk about the high school action. On the baseball front, both Glasgow and Barren County are kind of off to a rough start. And I say this in the sense Barren County, I think, has played a tougher schedule. But I do believe that the loss to Grayson County at Grayson County, I think that was on Friday, probably was one that was disappointing. I'm not sure how good Grayson is. But, when you play Franklin Simpson, they're good. I think they have 13 seniors, play South Warren, Bowling Green, these schools that they've played at in the early part of this season, you're like, okay, well, we're going to learn something from this and we're going to get better. But then you hope that translates into when you play Grayson County, then what they've learned out of the first couple of weeks turning into something positive, and they end up losing that game. And I'd say that might be a disappointing loss. Otherwise, despite the record of 2-6, I mean, you look at the schedule and you're like, well, if you were 4-4 out of that, that'd be a great start to the season.
Yeah, it's consistent though with Coach Alfonso in terms of he's started off all 3 years. They kind of started off rather. I don't know if it's slow. It's just who they play.
Yeah. It's a front-loaded schedule.
Front-loaded schedule. They've lost to Taylor, who's a top team. They've lost to Bowling Green, who's a top team. Mm-hmm. They played Camelsville last week and was up 1-0 going to the 7th and gave up 4 in the 7th.
Yeah. Maybe that's a disappointing loss, too, although I think Camelsville's
good. The Camelsville's got a good team, but, when you have a lead, you like to – they're not getting blown out. They're in every game and so forth. And right now their pitching is a little off. Last year the strength of the team was the pitching, and right now I think their team ERA is over 5. Now some of it may be skewed because they give up, I think, 20 to Russell County.
Yeah, that's 20 right. It was a 20-10 game.
Yeah, so it's a little skewed a little bit, but it's still early. 8 games in 2 weeks, and hadn't even had a spring break. That's when come back from spring break is when normally things kind of get settled into a rhythm and so forth.
Yeah, so and he's not letting up this week. I mean, I think they're playing, like we mentioned, they're playing South Warren today. So and then during spring break they're going to play in Tampa in this big tournament down there that's obviously going to be loaded with really good teams.
Starting 2 freshmen.
Yeah, that's right.
2 freshmen are in the lineup and so forth. So it's and they're relatively still young.
Yeah.
But they're starting 2 freshmen and. It's been a little bit of a rough start, but not totally unexpected.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, Glasgow, they've not played as strong a schedule. They are 3-4 overall.
3-5.
3-5 overall. That's right. And to be honest with you, at the end of last week, I was like, this might be the roughest Glasgow season we've seen we've ever seen, because we've not seen a season. Even they usually play a really good schedule, and so their record may not be great, sort of like Barron's a lot of times during the Sam Royce era. But they were good because usually their pitching was pretty good, their defense was good. Sometimes they weren't the best at scoring runs, but through the first couple of weeks they've had some games where they've just honestly just gotten beat pretty handily.
They have 15-3 to Greenwood last week, but they did have one good win last week. They beat Franklin 7-3.
Yeah.
So they did beat Franklin 7-3. They got a good pitching performance from, I think it was Austin Parker and Mason Bass. Mm-hmm. Those two gave them a good performance, and scoring 7 runs off Franklin, it was a good deal. So one of their 3 wins is against I assume Franklin is good. They normally are really good. They beat Barren as well, 6-1. So I think that's a good win. They finished the week losing to Warren East 11-4. So,
the funny thing about those 2 games is, and this is what I was going to get at, looking at their schedule, and that win over Franklin Simpson came as a shock to me, to be honest, because I saw Franklin play Barren County. Mm-hmm. And Franklin has 13 seniors. I think they're one of the favorites in the region. They're right there in the 3-4, favorite area in the region. And so I had talked to Alfonso before Barren played Franklin Simpson. He goes, and Meach started against Franklin as well, who gave Taylor so much trouble. And so I asked Alfonso how good they are. He goes, I think they're supposed to be pretty good. And then I saw that game, and I was like, I don't give – just based on Glasgow's performances coming into that game, I didn't really give them a whole lot of hope. And then they won the game, and I was like, okay, that was surprising. And then they played that game Saturday morning. They played Warren East Saturday afternoon. They were up in that game 4-2. They ended up losing at 11-4. They gave up 7 runs, I think, in the 5th or 6th inning, something like that. But I was actually kind of encouraged by the 3 games that they played in those 2 days, because they played Logan County on Friday night. Logan's pretty good. And they just played better again in all 3 of those games, despite the actual Warren East score. And so I was like, okay, maybe they're turning a corner.
Well, Franklin and East were on the same day.
Yes, that's right.
Saturday. Yeah, okay. So, baseball is tricky to try to analyze unless you're there and you can see things, because your lineup may stay the same, but the pitching it does not stay the same.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky part about baseball, and it's what makes it somewhat different from softball. In softball, unless you're going with a staff, which they do in college now, most high school coaches just go with one pitcher, sometimes 2. So the results are more consistent, I think, in softball. In baseball, it often just depends on who's throwing, because you may have a bad team but a great pitcher, and you're going to be competitive that game.
Yeah. Well, and so I guess I've been encouraged by those 3 games, because I know the 3 teams they played right there are 3 of the better teams in the 4th region this year. And they played pretty well against all of them, despite, one of them lost 2 of them. But still, compared to some of their performances earlier in the week and the week before, where they just actually didn't compete very well.
Well, they've had pitching problems, too, more so than even Barren. That's part of the problem right now, I think, with Glasgow. I think they hit the ball pretty well.
Yeah. But
the pitching has been early on in the year. That's probably been the biggest issue.
Well, and we have a whole new coaching staff and that kind of stuff. So it's maybe the adjustment of coaches and players getting used to each other, because you knew what was going to happen after 32 years with Sam Royce. You were going to walk in the door. You knew exactly how everything was going to be as a player. You know what I mean? You knew how he was going to coach you, what he was going to expect from you. Probably how he was going to handle his lineups. It was kind of, if you had been in the program, you knew what was going to happen. Or even if you were coming up in the program, you heard about what was going to happen. So this is all new, and maybe that's part of the early struggles as well. On the softball front, Barren County's rolling right along. That win over Louisville Holy Cross on Saturday was pretty impressive. I mean, they slugged the ball. They didn't have to defend a whole lot. I think they gave up 2 hits in the game before in the 4 innings that it was played. And Chloe Witcher was awfully good in the circle once again. Then they beat Grayson 7-0 later that evening on Saturday. So, I mean, they're rolling right along at the moment.
Well, they're 5-1. They played 3 games last week and did not give up a run.
Yeah, there's that.
10-0 against Cumberland County, Grayson County 7-0, and Holy Cross 15-0.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chloe Witcher has picked up from where she was last year, and Barren obviously has a good everyday lineup too, so they can score. And, when you have a pitcher of the ability that Witcher has, then you're always going to be a threat to win against the best teams.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Barren has proven, that if you don't have a really good pitcher, you don't have much of a chance against Barren, because Witcher's probably going to shut you down.
Yeah.
So you've got to score a little bit, and so 5-1, they only lost to the number 1 team in the state, South Warren.
Yeah. And it's a game I think that they kind of feel like was closer than that actual 6-1. They struggled a little bit early in that game, and then kind of played better as the game went along.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that's the case. As good as Witcher has been as a pitcher, she's still a freshman.
That's exactly. I mean? That's right.
So sometimes you still are going to have those moments where it's like, oh, this is a freshman, and then she bounces back. So it'll be curious to see how it goes. I think missing those 2 games, the Frederick Douglass male games that they were supposed to play the week before, that would have been good, because that had been 2 of the better teams they would have faced along with South Warren. We'd have a little better idea. They're playing pretty well against the people. They're kind of feasting on the other people on their schedule so far, out of that combination of what you mentioned, Witcher's pitching and the hitting, from the top of the order to the bottom of the order at the moment. And then, of course, I think they are at Greenwood today. Now, that'll be an interesting one.
Be a good challenge.
Yeah. Now, the pitcher last year that Greenwood had that they didn't pitch until they got to the playoffs for the most part.
Yep.
Yeah. But they still have a good team.
Yes, they do.
And there was a game they had last week. What was it? They played a game where they won 10-8. Who was that against? I can't remember now. But anyway, apparently Greenwood puts up runs this year. Maybe their pitching, obviously, it's not going to be as strong because she was an outstanding pitcher. But so it'll still be a good test right here at this part of the season. And then Glasgow, they have, their number 1 pitcher, Addison McCoy, has not pitched yet this year due to an injury. So Memphis Prophet is in there, and she's done okay. They have struggled to score runs probably more than anything, and then, giving up the runs on the other end eventually as the games kind of go along. The game against Campbellsville on Thursday night was a fascinating one, because they were down in that game 11-1 in the 4th inning, and then came back and got within a run but couldn't quite pull the comeback all the way.
16-15.
Yeah, it was the final. So I'm not sure what we know about them yet either. I do think they've got to be able to score runs better than they have so far.
Well, yeah, they've given up a lot too. I mean, Adair 15-0.
Yeah.
16-15 at Campbellsville.
Yeah.
So it's probably a combination of both. You can't outslug teams that are really good very often. So yeah, I mean, getting the pitcher back will help, but it's just hard. It's hard when you're giving up as many runs as they're giving up right now. It's early, 2 weeks, they're 1-4.
Yeah. Well, and their schedule is real interesting, too, because they play a district game at Allen County today.
Who's off to a slow start.
Yes, they are. I think they're 1-3 or 1-4, something like that.
Something like that.
And as a sidebar real quick, I saw that they lost to Russellville 15-10.
Correct.
And then I said, well, dang, Allen County must be down. Then I go and look, Russellville's 4-1, and even though they graduated their 2 best players, I think it was, maybe Davenport's just doing a really good job over there.
I don't know who they played.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, their 1 loss is to Christian County. I just didn't, with Amelia Collier graduating, I just kind of felt like they weren't going to be much to be thought of.
I agree. It surprised me they beat Allen.
Yes, and that's it. They beat Allen 15-10. I mean, what a crazy score. And so then you kind of look at it, and I thought, well, Allen must not be very good. But maybe Russellville's just better than I thought they were. I'm not sure. I don't know what to think about either one of them at this point. But that also leads me to this, Glasgow going over there to start the district play today against them. And, I just don't know what we're going to see. I just hopefully I imagine Allen can score runs. They've been pretty good at run scoring in the last few years, even when they've struggled in other areas.
True.
And so I imagine It might be a game that's a blistering pace of a game when it comes to run scoring.
Possible.
And then, of course, tomorrow Glasgow hosts Barren County, so Barren will open their district play tomorrow over at Glasgow, and we've kind of covered this already. Barren looks like I don't know how good Warren East is in the 15th district in softball, but right now it looks to me like Barren is much better than everybody else.
I don't know. I haven't seen. I can't imagine Warren East would fall flat on their face.
No, but they lost their coach who's been there for 20 years, and so.
But they're a big program too.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a culture of winning. Now he was a big part of that, and it may eventually feel the loss down the road.
Yeah.
But I think the year after or whatever, I think they'll still go be highly competitive.
Well, and they still have the two Joneses, I believe, and two or three others who were coming up and were pretty good last year.
Right.
They mainly struggled pitching last year, so if they got that cleaned up some, and I guess that's what we'll see if they do. They certainly had some run scorers on their team.
Right.
Anything else about the high school baseball or softball you can think of?
No, I mean it's weather has been fair. I mean it's been good enough to get games in, but I wouldn't say it's been comfortable at times. A lot of wind and so forth.
Yeah, today's another one of those.
Another windy day, I know.
That was one of the things Saturday over at Barren County. There probably would have been more home runs hit during the course of all the games played over there that day, but the wind was blowing in. You could see it they would hit it. It's like, oh, that's a home run on this field. It would hit, short of the fence,
right,
over and over. And I was like, well, that's pretty impressive out here today. All right, this is the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
All right, John, is there anything from the men's NCAA tournament that has surprised you? We'll start there.
Surprised me. It's been pretty chalky.
Yeah, it has, hasn't it?
Yeah,
compared to last year especially.
I mean, all number ones and number twos advanced. I think I'm right on that. I mean, the only major upset I would assume would be Kentucky, right?
I would say that was the biggest upset. And, maybe some people would point at the NC State win, but NC State played well in the ACC tournament, and so they were pretty hot coming in. And so that maybe isn't surprising. Yeah, I'd say the biggest upset is absolutely the Oakland-Kentucky game, mostly because this guy Gulke, who shot 23s and made 10 of them, it appeared they never defended him in the game. So... that might be the part that was most shocking out of the fact that Kentucky actually lost.
So, no, to me, there's not been a whole lot of there's nothing that really surprised me, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's been high scoring, to be honest with you. The games still drag on way too long. The last minute of the games take forever and ever and ever. They review things. That no way they should review things.
Yeah,
clear out of bounds. To me, the trying to get it perfect is hurting the tempo of the game.
Yeah,
gives coaches way too many extra timeouts to huddle. Checking.
That seemed to benefit Texas A&M against Houston in the
really,
last 2 minutes.
It hurts free throw shooters. You're icing free throw shooters over nothing.
Yeah, they
need to fix that. I mean, it's completely. It's taken away from me in the games. I mean, it's way too much. If you're going to have a stoppage in the last minute, my suggestion would be coaches are not allowed to speak to the players. You put both teams can huddle at the opposite free throw lines where they can't get into a fight or whatever, opposite of the bench.
Yeah.
And, officials go, but just give them free timeouts and all this other stuff.
I think that's a great idea because they're technically not supposed to be able to talk with them during those breaks, are they?
No, there's nothing against them. Once they have the break, they can talk to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's free timeouts and so forth. But, it's always the tournament's still great, no matter how much it can be screwed up at times. It's still fun to watch.
Yeah.
Haven't really had a buzzer beater to win per se. I mean, last night you had a buzzer beater to tie. It was the Houston game versus
Texas A&M.
Yeah, that was a tie, but Houston went on and won it.
Yeah.
Despite having 5 people foul out.
That was wild.
Yeah, it was wild. But It's been fun to watch. The UK game is obviously the disappointment for a lot of people around here, and it's we'll see what happens. I mean, I think there's going to be a decision on Cal tonight or tomorrow. I mean, I think that's just reading the tea leaves. It cost $33 million to get rid of him, but he certainly did not get a vote of confidence by the AD. He gave a no comment after the game.
Yeah. Well, and this kind of goes back to what we've talked about before, where it feels like Calipari sometimes hurts himself in his post-game press conferences and that kind of stuff, where after they lost the game to Oakland, I think it was, where he said, well, you've got these young players and they don't know what to do in these situations. And I'm like, okay, but they're your players. You've had them for a year.
Right.
And you've had all the time in the world to try to teach them these things that you're supposed to be capable of teaching them. And yes, I thought Reed Shepherd looked shaken in that game against Oakland.
So did Dilling. I mean, Wagner was worse. Didn't score.
Yeah.
I mean, the freshman did not play well.
No, and I'm like, okay, that's not surprising to me. You have a fifth-year, sixth-year guy over here, Golke, who knows his role, knows what he's supposed to do, and, he's going to have an experience advantage. But, dadgum, you got people who should be able to figure out how to get by a screen and guard him, or at least step out on him when he shoots it from 30 feet, because that's all he does.
Yeah, the national conversation about Cal has been it's been interesting to listen to, that he needs to change, that he's playing with freshmen against older players.
What an ironic thing.
Yeah. The problem with that is that he does this year, in fairness to Cal, this is in fairness to Cal and against Cal, he does have older transfer.
Yes, he does.
Trey Mitchell is a fifth-year guy. Reeves is a fifth-year guy. Those are his two best players of the night, too, by the way. So he does. It's not all freshmen. He does have, and he had some players coming back. I think the biggest indictment on Cal is his team didn't play very well. He had 4 days to prepare. Actually, the draw was Sunday. They played on Thursday. They had 4 days to prepare for an Oakland team. Listen, they're not the Boston Celtics. They lost 12 games. And they played a zone.
That was 1-3-1, right?
Well, it's a difference. A little 2-3, a little matchup, whatever. But they played that 90% of the time this year. So it's and they had one guy who could shoot. Who only thing he did was shoot 3-pointers. He made over 200 3-pointers this year. And he only made 8 twos. So you kind of knew what to expect. And Kentucky did not play well. I mean, it's not that they're young. This deal about older players, the older player deal is about to end because right now they're super older because of the COVID.
Right.
You get that fifth year, so you got people who are 23, 24, 25. Well, that ends pretty quickly. Now you're still going to have older seniors and so forth. You'll still have that. Don't get me wrong.
The transfer portal will still be a thing.
Transfer portal is going to be a thing.
Spend a whole career in college.
That's correct. That part's going to end. It's just that Cal's teams they've not played well. I mean, that's the biggest thing. They just hadn't played well. Now, is it nerves? If they're consistently not playing well because of nerves, then that goes to him. And to me, what's frustrating from the Kentucky point of view, I can tell you with all my heart and soul, I believe this: if Rick Pitino was coaching that team back when Rick was at Kentucky, Kentucky would have beat Oakland 30 points. Because what he would have done was he would have utilized all of his players. With Cal, he's got so many players. I don't think he knows what to do with them. But I can tell you one thing that you should do: if you've got 9, 10, 11 players you want to play, then you got to press them to death, play full court and so forth, and things like that, and make it a helter-skelter game where you get more shots, you get the ball down the floor before the zone sets up, and you wear them down. That's how. And Rick's teams, whether you like Rick or not, when he was at Kentucky, you could just book it. They were winning the SEC tournament, getting to the finals, and they would blow people out early. Because there'd be you're not going to have nerves when you don't have time to think. You're just playing.
Right.
And Cal has these players, and sometimes I think he'd be better off just give him roster 7. Where he can't make decisions. He just has to play those 7. But he doesn't, and if you're going to have 11, 10, and they're athletic as can be, then you got to you got to at least use that to your advantage. And I just never have thought he's ever done that. And I think the other indictment this year is, I've said this 1,000 times, most coaches, I just have never seen a coach at that level. You don't really see it at high school level either. That just doesn't play the right people. I mean, that's what I have never understood.
Yeah. Not
to start Dillingham and Shepard. If you just maybe you want to start one older one, but you can't put both of them on the bench because how many times this year have they come in? They were down 8-2, 10-2. This time against Oakland, when they came in, they weren't down 8-2, 10-2. It was 4-4. But guess what? Kentucky was Oakland was like 2 for 10 at the time. And maybe if you started them, maybe still it's 4-4. You're ahead 8-4, you're 10-4. You can relax and play rather than you're just constantly like climbing that mountain. And I've just have never understood that. You know, maybe in middle school when you're trying to play different people and you're rationing the minutes, you know. But in high school, you tend to try, and maybe there's a senior that that you're going to just start, maybe over a freshman because that's just, you need that senior. You really need him. The freshman may be better, but, it kind of works out. But I've never seen it at that level. Never seen it at that level, and it was consistent all year, and he's done that in the past, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how you don't play your best players.
A couple of things that you mentioned in that rant that stood out to me. One was the 4 days to prepare for a team that doesn't do anything but shoot threes basically and play a zone. All right? Defensively play a zone. How do you not come up – because – during the tournament, I heard people, announcers talking about this. What's the best way to deal with the zone? Well, you got to attack it. Don't stand around and stare at it. Figure out ways to make the angles in the zone, attack the zone. It didn't look like Kentucky had a plan for doing that against whatever Oakland was doing. And just the fact that this team has one guy, he's not going to shoot the ball anywhere, under 26 feet or whatever it is. He's the guy you really need to stop because you can stop the others. You're bigger and more athletic than the others.
I think they made a mistake. A couple of things on with that one guy, the shooter. He's such a unique player. Kentucky almost changed the way that they always played. They were playing almost like a little league defense. No help. You're just wherever he goes, you go.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they ran into each other and they try to switch and try to. I almost think in a lot of ways, if you're not used to doing that during the year, and I've never seen them do that during the year, it's just like if you're not used to playing a boxing chaser, it's hard just to gear up in 2 days. Let's play a boxing chaser. Right. They almost treated him too special.
Yeah.
Too much. Where close enough, and then close out, and so forth. But they left him. They almost did too much. Where all he did was a little shot fake, and they'd fly by, and he'd just have a wide open shot, and so forth. It's almost they overdid it. And they didn't really – those young guards didn't know what they were doing, to be honest with you.
Yeah. That is true. Dillingham and Shepard, you could tell they were hunting them out, trying to get them matched up in different situations because they knew they could expose them.
But again, for a team that averages close to 90 points a game, Kentucky only scored 74.
There's that. One other thing I would say that might be a slight indictment.
They played too slow.
Yeah. That might be a slight indictment on Cal's defense against Oakland, was that Alabama, which has not been a very good defensive team all year, basically clamped him down. And Oakland still played well against them.
Well, Alabama didn't play Oakland.
I'm sorry.
It was North Carolina State.
Yeah, North Carolina State.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was a good game in the end, but, they were able to – North Carolina State – defended him. They just put the dude on him and said... Yeah,
they didn't do anything crazy.
Yeah. They just played good, hard defense, basically.
They did. They didn't do anything crazy. But it still came down to overtime.
Well, that's true.
Oakland, not like they played bad. They played good.
Yeah. So, as it turned out, Oakland actually had a very good team.
They had a good team. Good team. Not great, but good. Yeah. And so we'll see. But the big thing right now is the countdown with Cal. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
$33 million is that's a big check to walk away. I think it's close.
Really?
I really do. I think it's close, because the fan base is kind of been – I think the fan base is sometimes it's gone past anger. I think they're apathetic, and that's the worst place to be honest with you.
Well, I was going to say, so interestingly enough, I mean, still 19,000 of them were showing up for home games. So, but at the same time, it's almost like they were showing up at the home games.
Well, the team was fun to watch this year.
Well, yeah, but with the also the expectation of how they would show up, watch the team, think they were fun to watch, and also say to themselves, "What is Cal going to do to blow this one?" And it's, it was kind of like that. I feel like the whole year. It's like, yeah, they're a lot of fun, but is this Calipari or is this them? You know what I mean? It was the question all year, I think. Meanwhile, WKU, they opened against Marquette. I thought they played pretty well with them for most of the game until like the last 10 minutes or so.
Up 7.5.
Yeah,
I thought they were tremendous in the first half.
Yeah,
I mean they shot the ball well, had great energy, and I thought they'd play well against Marquette. But Marquette. They got it going in the second half. The guard had been out 6 or 7 games.
Yeah.
Player of the year in the Big East. He got it going in the second half, and Marquette's really, really good. But I thought Western played well.
Yeah.
I thought they performed well. They competed. McHenry was good. I think Newman played well. Nothing to be disappointed. They just – Marquette got on a big roll, and I thought Western would make one comeback, but they really couldn't in the second half. And once Marquette got that lead, boy, they just not much of a comeback in any way by Western.
Yeah, Marquette is also a fun team to watch.
They are another Big East team. Big East is 3-0.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the Big East is 6-0. 3 teams have both won 2.
Yeah,
and the ACC that everybody criticized, they got 4 out of the 16 teams.
Yeah,
the only team that did not was Virginia, and they shouldn't have been in anyway.
That's right. Yeah. The ACC has proven to be better than expected. The SEC maybe not.
One time SEC had 8 teams in. They got 1 team left, Alabama.
2. Tennessee, right?
Alabama, Tennessee. They got two left. That's correct.
Yeah, although I didn't think Alabama would be here.
Playing good, aren't they?
Yeah.
That little guard is tough.
Yeah. And then going back to the one more, we'll get to UConn here in a second, but the Houston, Texas, there were 2 games actually I wanted to mention that I thought fascinated me. One was the game Grand Canyon, and then the Houston Texas A&M game. Both those games were just like it was like watching street ball, and I don't mean because they didn't run offenses. Grand Canyon didn't, but just because they were so physical.
Yep.
I mean, they were just all bodies all over the floor.
It really was.
Not much foul calling in it, although Houston would dispute that idea.
Yeah, they had 5 that fell out.
Yeah, I mean, eventually there was a lot of foul calling, but dang, there was so much contact in the game. I'm not sure how Texas A&M didn't have 5 fouled out as well.
Yeah.
But it was just it was wild to watch those 2 games, just the frenetic pace of them, I guess.
Yeah, the pace of play has been something.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think the basketball overall has been good. I do think a lot of these older teams play well. Mm-hmm. You're talking about 22, 23, 24-year-old guys. And, it's like they said, Kentucky, those young kids at 18 will be 18, 19, they'll go pro. And when they're 23, they'll be much better basketball players than some of these 23-year-olds that are beating them right now.
Yeah.
But right now, they're not.
Yeah. Well, and so then there's UConn, who brought back 2 of their starters from last year. Now they lost 2 key players.
Got a good freshman and a couple of transfers.
Yeah, but they look really good in their first 2 games.
They're playing like Rick's teams back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
They don't mess around.
They just keep coming at you.
They
wave
just
after
blow
wave.
you out. That's correct. There's no time for nerves. They just come at you.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's been a lot of fun. And, I think we got some interesting Sweet 16 matchups. I don't know. We talked about the fact that there weren't really any upsets other than the Oakland-Kentucky game because I didn't think the NC State upset was an upset, really.
Creighton and Tennessee should be a good one.
Yeah.
And Houston-Duke.
Yes.
Can Duke handle Houston's physicalness? I don't know if they can.
Although they put up some points, man. They did. That surprised me, to be honest with you. I didn't see that coming from Duke.
North Carolina, Alabama could be high scoring.
Yeah.
So there's some.
That'll also be a brawl.
Yeah. There could be. There's some obviously 16 teams left, and all 1s and 2 seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And throw in North Carolina State as the only double-digit seed. Yeah, it should be good.
Yep. Anything else you can think of from the men's tournament?
No, people like upsets, but I think after the first round or 2, I think people want to see the best teams play.
Yeah, that's probably true. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, for the women's tournament, I'm going to start off here. For 4 quarters and a half, I thought maybe, dang, Middle Tennessee is a really good team.
For how many quarters?
4 quarters and a half. Because they were up on LSU at halftime, 37-32.
4 quarters.
Well, yeah.
2 quarters and a half. 2 quarters.
Well, they played 4 quarters in women's basketball, right?
You said for 4 quarters and a half. That means...
Well, the first 4 quarters against Louisville, which they won.
Okay. All right.
And then the first half against LSU.
Okay.
And then LSU just mollywhopped them in the second half. So, but that's what I'm getting at. For a game and a half, I thought, dang, they are a really good team.
They are good.
But then LSU just laid that to rest.
Well,
because LSU's that good.
Well, LSU's good. They also just... I don't know how to put it. I mean, they just physically... wore them out. I think that's the nice thing to say against Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee's up 6.5 or 5.5, but they were in foul trouble. And I think Middle had 1 player foul out all year, and they had 3 that game. And I mean, to beat LSU, especially at LSU, I mean, you got to have bodies upon bodies upon bodies upon bodies, because it's such. Watching LSU it's like watching a train wreck sometimes. It's just an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
From just the whole atmosphere. And I thought Middle Tennessee handled himself really well. And it's just after a while, I mean, some of it is you're not going to get a whistle when another team is physically dominant. You know, that's part of it. Sometimes I think you don't get the whistle when you're the underdog too, times maybe, and I didn't think they got outshot 31-3 from the free throw line in the second half.
Yeah, they got no benefits.
Yeah, they got none. And you know, when the Middle's big kid, 6'6" kid, fouled out, it was still with like 2 minutes to go in the third quarter when Angel Reese basically just slipped. And I mean, really, it's just a slip and so forth. But I thought Middle. I was proud of Middle in terms of for Conference USA. I thought they performed great.
Yeah.
Had a lead. I told you last week I thought they had a great opportunity to beat Louisville. And they came back from 18 down to beat Louisville.
Yeah.
And, with Savannah Wheeler, great guard from Kentucky, by the way. Boyd County, player of the year in the conference. She was big. And Savannah Gregory, a great shooter and so forth for Middle. I thought Middle performed very well for the conference, a big win over Louisville. Obviously, I was disappointed because, obviously I like Jeff Walls in Louisville, but they had, for them, a relatively down year. They still won 20 and got there, but, got knocked out by 11 seed.
Yeah.
But Middle, congratulations to Middle. I mean, they got beat by LSU in LSU's sold-out arena and gave them a big-time scare.
Against 8 players, huh?
No. It's a combination. I did not think they got the benefit of the whistle at all. But part of it is when you are a smaller team going against the physicalness of LSU.
Right.
LSU's a hard team to call.
I guess
it's a very difficult team to call.
Yeah, revisit our prior segment. If you have the better physical talent, then make the officials make calls.
Yes.
Don't let them off the hook by being passive. Or not being, but you got to be aggressive if you have the physically better team.
Right.
And it's a lesson that is kind of a funny one that you don't see learned sometimes in basketball. You see coaches really kind of throttle back their players and not let them just go full bore because they're afraid their players might foul out. But, I mean, if you got a bench that you can put in there and you're going to miss something, but physically you're not going to miss anything, then you just got to go at them, I think. And that's basically what they did to them.
They did. And LSU's, they can win the national championship.
Yeah.
Sometimes in these things, just going back to Kentucky and men, just like Purdue, if you can get by that first game, you almost relax and just play.
Yeah.
Because the biggest pressure is like first round of the district. You don't want to go home losing the first round. And when Purdue finally got that the burden off their shoulders, and they played tremendous the second game. Just blew them out. I think if Kentucky could have got by against Oakland, they may have. There's no doubt in my mind they probably beat North Carolina State. They would just relax and they would just play.
Yeah.
And for these top teams that kind of struggle to get by, just if you can get by that first one, things just really open up. That's why I think in the first games, whether it's men or women, you've got to be ultra aggressive if you're the favorite.
Well, and to that end, I mean, LSU didn't actually play that well in their
They
first
did
game
not.
of the tournament and the first half, really,
They
against
did
Middle
not,
Tennessee.
and they finally got it going and so forth. So
Yeah.
they'll be a tough out if they can get. I don't know if their chemistry is great. I just don't think LSU is as good as they were last year. Haley Van Lith just does not fit. In fact, she was benched in the second half.
Yeah.
Just not a fit. But they've got enough talent to win it.
Well, their chemistry's not great, and what you said about watching them is like watching a train wreck. Is because on the court and off the court, you have this feeling around them all the time, like they're on the razor's edge of just cracking.
Yep.
Because of just the storm
go either
that's-
the emotion. You can go either way. South Carolina looks awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, in the women's game, they
Talk
are.
about not needing the emotion to win the games. I mean, they can just club you.
They're so much better offensively this year than last year. Plus, they're so big. They look good. Got Caitlin Clark in Iowa tonight on big time TV. I think, right? I mean, they're on tonight, prime time. So you got her going tonight. It's I've been watching both of them, going back and forth watching. I watched the Iowa State-Stanford game last night, went to overtime. Stanford pulled that one out at the end. They had a girl that got 40, 41. So it's been fun. I mean, I've enjoyed watching the women's tournament.
Well, and going back to the chalkiness of the men's, the women's is usually chalkier. Even though we've had some upsets in recent years.
Duke beating Ohio State was an upset yesterday.
Well, but the only double-digit seed was at Middle Tennessee over Louisville.
Right.
So and then they went out. So it's pretty chalky. But yeah, I was going to ask you, is that really a big upset? The Duke beating Ohio State?
Probably. I mean, not big. I mean, Duke's Duke, but Ohio State was a 2 seed, and it actually was the Big Ten regular season champion over Iowa. So, I thought that was an upset at Ohio State.
Yeah. But do you think the 4 1 seeds are probably going to make it? I mean, LSU's a 3 seed, right? Which is kind of surprising. I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's I think Iowa is very acceptable because they're staring at UCLA and LSU. One of those, that'd be a tough game.
Yeah.
I'm not sold on. I think UConn's got a great shot to come out of the West.
Is USC the one in the West?
USC's the one out there. Yeah. I think they have a shot out there. So, the one team that I'm pretty confident will be South Carolina. And I think Texas is going to be tough to beat, too.
Yeah. We talked about this, I think, even last week on the show, that I feel like South Carolina, despite that blip against Tennessee, which they won in the SEC tournament, they're just playing with a different kind of attitude.
Well, they've always had size, but what's different this year is they got much better shooting.
Yeah, because in the last couple of years, you could just kind of pack it in on them and dare them to make threes, and they just couldn't do it.
Well, they would win ugly.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, just throw it up on the backboard and rebound 3 times. That's kind of ugly to me. They're not playing ugly this year.
No. Dawn Staley went out and fixed the problems that she had after last season's abrupt outage in the tournament. So, they are a different team and different animal, and they're also fun to watch too. Even if they weren't fun to watch the last few years, but they are actually fun to watch this year.
I agree.
Anything else on the women's tournament you can think of?
No, I mean it's just like the men. It's a fun tournament, and they're they are on all day today too.
All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
All right, John, the boys state high school basketball tournament wrapped up Saturday night. They played 3 games on Saturday. But anyway, Lyon County won it. They have 293 students or 298 students, something like that. They beat Harlan County, which I thought was bigger, but you told me before we came on has about 700 students.
That's what I thought I read.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of an interesting
well, that puts a squash on all that, got classes that small schools can't win, blah, blah, blah. You hear that all the time. It's, you only need 5.
Small schools can win if their players stay at their school.
Well, and they did at Lyon County.
Did indeed.
And they took out the biggest school up there, Great Crossing.
Yeah.
In Lexington. So I think they're one of the top 5 biggest schools in the state.
Right.
Took them down. I mean, it's possible. I mean, you just need 5 players is all you need. And Lyon County, obviously you have a special player in the Perry kid who's going to UK, but they've got other ones too. He didn't just win it.
No.
I mean, they had several good players. They played a schedule the last 2 or 3 years to prepare them for it. Mm-hmm. And, they had a close – they're probably the worst game they played was the first one at the state tournament.
Yeah.
But got by that one, and it's a great story. Obviously, it's a great story, high school basketball. 2 county schools in the final. Mm-hmm. One of the smaller ones in Harlan County, not a giant school by any ways. Mm-hmm. And congratulations. I mean, for all the sometimes the talk that that you. You can't beat the big ones or Louisville schools or Lexington. Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can.
And it is. I mean, I do think.
I'm not saying that they don't have an advantage, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting situation because, I think Travis Perry's dad is obviously the high school coach at Lyon County, and these players, this particular group, stayed together, played together, pretty much, I guess, played for him during the summer, I would guess, since they were in the second grade. So it's kind of a team that's been built over 10 years, basically. And so you kind of look at it, that's a unique situation in its own right. But I think the most important thing is the key players that started playing together stayed together, because there's all this pressure for people to go somewhere else to be seen and all that. And I always say, I tell people this still. People will say, well, they need to be at this school so they'll be seen. I'm like, no. They probably need to play during the summer at these AAU tournaments. I'm not always for AAU, but I can see where that exposure in these big tournaments, not the weekend things, but these big events are exposure opportunities.
You can be seen anywhere if you're good enough.
Yeah, but now you got the technology to be seen online. You've got Huddle, and you have all these different things where people can see your highlights. And here's a little shocking thing people may not realize. College coaches have people who call around and ask questions. And they don't just wait for players to fall in their lap. They're constantly recruiting. People used to say to me, like when I worked at the newspaper, well, why don't you do this or that or whatever? College coaches are trying to recruit my son. I'm like, they're not calling me to ask me how good your son is or your daughter is. If they're doing that, I would not want them to play for that person. They're not doing their due diligence if they're reading the Glasgow Daily Times at that time to figure out who they should be recruiting from around here.
Right.
So I mean, a lot of that stuff is debunked in its own way.
Well, there's a lot of good players at the state tournament this year. The kid from Harlan County that's going to South Carolina.
Trent Noah.
Oh my goodness, he was tremendous. 6'6". Good gracious, he was good. I mean, Adair showed well. I mean, they went up there and got a good win against, I think it was Marshall County, and they played well and got some good exposure. They're all back. I mean, their best players are all juniors, so they'll be good next year. And there was just some good teams up there.
Yeah. Well, it was
Butler County played well.
They did indeed.
Butler County went up there and played well. Good exposure for them, a team that's all juniors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there was a bunch to be seen. There were a lot of teams that made it there for the first time. I saw a lot. I think 2 that were there for the first time.
Butler and Spencer.
Yeah.
And that small school out of Louisville. Evangel Christian.
Yeah. So there was a lot of players that got an opportunity to be seen at that tournament, but don't think any of them showed up and people didn't know about them. I guess is also what I'm getting at.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the track season got underway this past weekend. Now Barren County didn't send a team to the Runtown. What is this thing called? Runtown Distance Festival in Bardstown. I can never remember what this is called, but some Barren County runners did go up there. Brody Miller finished 11th in the 1 mile run. He ran 4:40:11, and there were 2 or 3 others I think that went up there. I think Chesney McPherson did not go. I think she's been nursing an injury, and so I don't think that their first full team event isn't going to be until after spring break. Coach Bills told me. And then Glasgow went and competed at Greene County. One notable missing athlete was Cynthia Austin for Glasgow. She wasn't there, but Lucas Christian had an outstanding day. He won the triple jump. He and at 41 feet 6 3/4 inches, and then he finished second in the 100-meter dash, which he does not usually run. because he runs the 110 hurdles. So I asked him, I said, have you ever done that before? He said, well, it's occasionally, he goes, I train at that distance. And so he talked about, but he ran 11 something in that.
Yeah. It's a good time this time of year in the cold weather.
Yeah, it was. And then he also won the 300 hurdles. So, it was a good meet for him. I think Glasgow has a bunch of people out there running this year. They've upped their numbers. They have a new head coach. Cedric Vaughn is the new head coach. And then I think Jason Christian is still helping out as well. A couple of other people. I'm not sure who else was out there. But, and then the tennis season also got underway. As a matter of fact, Barren and Glasgow are playing each other today over at Barren County High School in tennis.
Hope you got a good net game. Because I'd be at the net in this wind.
No, don't hit a lob.
No lobs.
They may go backward out of there.
No lobs today. That's correct.
Yeah. So so they're going to be playing over there today. And then they both played this weekend. Hosted Clinton County and Grayson County. I think were the two that came, and Russell County. That's what it was. Clinton and Russell came over. One went over to Glasgow in the morning and over to Barren in the afternoon, and they swapped it. This week will be a little bit busy, but then next week a lot of people just won't be here.
Spring break, right?
Yeah, they'll be on spring break. A lot of I think Glasgow softball's not going, but I think Glasgow baseball, Barren County baseball, and Barren County softball are all going to Florida next week. I think those three are.
Sounds right.
Yeah, and so it'll be a little bit of a slow week in this area, but we'll be keeping up with what's going on, even though they're not here. Anything else? The Major League Baseball season is not far away.
Yeah, they've already started, but for the Yankees and Padres overseas. But, I think opening day's Thursday.
Yeah. You looking forward to that?
It's okay. It's all right.
You like it once it gets deeper in the season?
Yeah. It's 162 games. It's like the NBA. That's too many games to really get too fired up every day.
What are our Reds' prospects this year, you think?
Should be good.
Yeah.
I think people are expecting a run for the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, they made a miraculous turnaround last year.
There are a lot of good young players. If the pitching comes through like they think, I think they should be in serious contention.
Yeah. Who's going to win the World Series this year, you think? Who's loaded up with the talent right now? The Dodgers?
Oh, of course the Dodgers are, but who knows in Major League Baseball? I don't know. Did anybody think Texas was going to win it last year?
That has been the interesting thing about the MLB in recent years.
You might think Arizona's going to be in the final.
No.
It's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is the interesting thing is the Major League Baseball has proven in its playoffs in the last few years that the team that gets hot in the playoffs, not even at the end of the regular season, but in the playoffs.
Yeah, you got to get in.
Yeah. If you get in, it's opened the door. Used to, you just knew.
I just know it's not going to be the A's. How about that? They're out. I'm not counting them.
Yeah, Moneyball's no longer cashing checks.
They're out. They don't even know where they're playing, so they're out.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Anybody else is possible.
Everything's possible but the A's.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's probably right on. Yeah, I can't. The first game's overseas. That's.
It was last week.
Yeah, it was last week.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's so much so
stupid. It's dumb. I don't mind going overseas, but they played it at like 4 o'clock in the morning in American time. It's just
totally
dumb.
missed it.
Dumb.
All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.